So I call on Deputy Holly Kearns. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, less than 2 weeks ago we sat in here in the middle of an incredibly difficult week for survivors of mother and baby homes. Based on the advice of survivors and human rights lawyers, I and other TDs and a lot of the general public oppose aspects of the bill and propose changes to help those affected access their own personal information. I welcome the change in approach you've taken. However, it's unfortunate that this didn't happen at the outset. The delay obviously caused immeasurable and unnecessary distress for so many people. There were three main things, amongst others, that were being sought. One, that you retained a copy of the Mother and Baby Homes Commission archive, which you agreed to. Two, an explicit guarantee that GDPR requests would be permitted, and you have, in essence, confirmed since the bill was passed that this will happen. And three, the publication of an extensive index to the archive. This finding aid is necessary for people to access their personal information, and you have yet to confirm this part. I think you still have questions to answer about this. I had requested time to discuss this in the Dáil this week, but unfortunately, instead we had to spend hours talking about the Taoiseach's misunderstanding of the word confidential. The day after the Dáil passed this bill, we learned that the government went against the advice of the Data Protection Commission's assessment, and yesterday we learned that you were depending on legal advice from the department's officials and not the Attorney General until the week of the bill. These are serious questions that are still unanswered. And I'm asking for time to be secured in next week's schedule to address these matters. I think it's the least that people deserve. And I think the AG needs to meet with the collaborative forum to advise them as to how this happened. Nonetheless, in response to the incredible public pressure and the Repeal the Seal campaign, there has finally been acknowledgement of the right of survivors to access their information under GDPR, and that is so, so welcome. I also welcome the Taoiseach's confirmation to me earlier today that all survivors of institutional abuse will be able to access their personal data, not just in relation to mother and baby homes, but also in relation to the Ryan Report and the McAleese archives. However, I think I'm justified in treating these announcements with some degree of caution. The government's record in dealing with this over the past few weeks, and indeed decades, has been incredibly damaging, and people will understandably find it hard to trust that these promises will be kept. Even in relation to your recent announcements, people are already worried about what information will be redacted from documents and other bureaucratic barriers. Minister, it's essential, absolutely essential, that you ensure the proactive and full compliance with GDPR for survivors and all relevant persons. And this process has to be underpinned by person-centred legislation and a nuanced understanding of the legitimate rights of so-called third parties. You must define this in terms of duties of proactive disclosure and protection of identity rights. Last week you promised extra resources to ensure GDPR is implemented, and we're all very grateful for that. It is crucial that you engage experienced data protection law experts, preferably including international expertise, to assist your department and the government in giving people their information. Your department needs to be prepared to provide individuals access to its copy of the Commission's archive, assisting TUSLA in remediating its practice, and instructing all other holders of historical abuse information. It's urgent that you bring in independent experts, because trust in the department's legal knowledge in this field is understandably so low. These experts would be able to work with you and the Data Protection Commission to create the necessary systems. So, Minister, you've promised extra resources to ensure GDPR is implemented. Can you outline what steps you have taken or will take to recruit independent, expert data protection law advisors to deal with personal data access requests? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister Roderick O'Gorman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to the Deputy for her query. To begin with, I absolutely acknowledge the importance of the issue of access to the Commission's archive, which is due to be deposited with my department from the end of February 2021. I'm committed to fully implementing the right of access under GDPR for those who wish to access their personal information from that date. I can confirm that my department will provide appropriate guidance for individuals in good time to assist persons wishing to access personal information from this archive when it transfers to my department. I've committed to continued engagement with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner to ensure that the rights of all citizens to access personal information about themselves under data protection legislation and the GDPR are fully respected and implemented, and the recent clarity provided by the Attorney-General is very helpful in this regard. The Commission of Investigation, Mother and Baby Homes and Certain Related Matters, Records and Another Member Act 2020 was brought forward by the Government to provide urgent and critical legal clarity surrounding the protection and the future use of a database compiled by the Mother and Baby Home Commission during the course of its 5-year investigation. The Act was brought forward to preserve invaluable information, not to put information beyond reach. Of critical importance in this debate is the development of future legislation on rights of access to birth information. Future information and tracing legislation will provide a statutory basis for access to these records and will reduce the necessity to apply for the information in the form of subject access requests. I've committed to introducing legislation to the Oireachtas in 2021 on this point, and I discussed the proposals for legislation on this with the Oireachtas Committee on Children, Equality, Disability and Integration yesterday. It's important to state that the records from the Commission will not transfer to my department until the end of February 2021. This is to allow the Commission time to consult with all those who gave their stories to the confidential committee to ensure their wishes in respect of the inclusion of their names in the record are respected. And that was another amendment that I introduced in the context of this legislation. I understand the Commission has compiled an extensive archive for which they will provide an index which will be most helpful in furthering the development of providing access to the material. Copies of these records that were provided to the Commission will be returned to the Department, along with many other records from a multitude of sources when the Commission deposits its records with me in February of next year. The Department digitalised and captured a significant number of these records in the course of making its discovery to the Commission. Not all contain personal information, but there's an immediate and resource-intensive task to catalogue and index all relevant records to assist in the effective management of subject access requests and related records management responsibilities. This is a significant issue and requires dedicated resources and expertise to develop a workable and GDPR compliant corporate solution. And as I've indicated, it's my intention to prioritise additional resources to this issue. It's anticipated that significant additional resources are going to be needed, both to manage current demand and those that will be made once the full archive of the Commission has been deposited with my department. Thank you.
Deputy Kearns, you have 2 minutes supplementary.
Thank you. Thanks, Minister. I'm sure you appreciated that there is considerable distrust among survivors and their representatives on this issue. Years of secrecy and denial compounded by an adversarial system that has rightly left people just a bit sceptical. I think that's understandable. I have to believe that you were doing what you thought was right. However, it also seems that you were let down by your own department, or as the examiner put it, left holding the bag. While you're the public face behind all of it, it appears the department was unable to properly deal with the matters, and the challenge is how we respond to the situation now. Government needs to engage with survivors and earn their trust. They need to recognise the deficiencies in the department, even if they can't do that publicly. And we must immediately bring in experienced data protection law experts, including international expertise, who can report to you as the data controller. There's an opportunity to start a new chapter, I think, in how the state treats survivors of mother and baby homes and other forms of institutional abuse in Ireland. The Mother and Baby Homes Commission report will be published shortly, and that's going to be a difficult time for everyone affected and a time for self-reflection, I think, as a society. It's so important that we get it right. I'd like, Minister, even if you could respond in writing in terms of the AG, the potential for them to meet with the collaborative forum in relation to the goings-on in the previous few weeks, and that the experts you're talking about appointing, that they are experts in GDPR specifically, to help you as the data controller to issue personal data access requests, not just from the Mother and Baby Homes Commission, but from other commissions in relation to institutional abuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Kearns. Minister, you have 2 minutes to reply.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Deputy. Well, absolutely, Deputy. Survivors are essential to all of this, and that's the key issue. And as I acknowledged in my earlier contributions, I didn't do enough to reach out to survivors prior to the introduction of this legislation, and I am in the process of rectifying this, and I've been engaging with survivors today and already this week, and will continue to do so. There are going to be a range of new responsibilities on my department in light of the clarification that the Attorney-General has provided. These are responsibilities that I welcome, but it's responsibilities that we have to resource, and we're in the process of resourcing them now. But as well as resourcing them, we also need to understand how we as a department carry out those responsibilities in a way that is fully compliant with the GDPR. My first port of call in relation to that will be with the Data Protection Commissioner, who is the official body to advise on this, and indeed had flagged issues before, which has helped advance this matter dramatically. I'm very happy to engage with international experts as well. I know a number of names were suggested to me by the Adoption Rights Alliance when myself and the Taoiseach met with them on Friday of last week. I'm very happy to engage, but I think that it is the Data Protection Commissioner, which are the statutory body in this state for overseeing the enforcement of the data rights in general, and of course the GDPR, and they will be my first port of call, but I am happy to engage further than that as well. I do think it's important to state that GDPR access will not address all of the issues around access to information, and that's why it's important that we bring in the information and tracing legislation as quickly as possible. And I think it's also important to understand that my department will be addressing the issues to do with the Commission's archive. The Ryan and McAleese reports are in other departments, and that's why the wider issue of access to information and the archiving issue, which the government made a very significant commitment to last week, will be fundamental in addressing the wider landscape of information and records about institutional abuse in Ireland in the 20th century, and my department looks forward to cooperating with other departments on that matter.
Thank you, Minister. We now move to item number 2 to discuss the timeline for a school building